So, I was recently at the 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh! NAWCQ. Don't ask how I did, the answer might surprise you. It wasn't well. And among the 4,000 people in attendance, and among almost every person I talked to, the general sentiment around the game was the same, and that is that this format is terrible. Not many people were having a great time with the event. A friend of mine who topped the event, links to his deck profile will be down below. Please do give it a watch. He did a really unbelievable job. His deck is so well built. He went on record afterwards saying, "I am looking forward to next format." There's a huge amount of disdain for the current state of the game, and I really want to take a deep dive into why that is, and what direction changes Konami can consider to avoid the game losing more players. It's been a trend people have seen happening for a while. A lot of the game's top talent have been jumping ship to other card games, and in fact, while writing and recording for this video, Sunseed Jess, former European champion and Worlds competitor, uploaded her video stating her intention to quit competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Unless something drastic changes, and I cannot recommend her video enough. It's a really insightful look into the game's problems from a much more competitive lens than I am able to provide. It's not just the competitors. Casual players have lost a lot of interest in the game, the metagame feels stale, the game's just not in a great state, and I know this is different from any other content on my channel, but bear with me, I want to kind of just walk this through and give some of my thoughts on it. First of all, products. It's not exactly a state secret that Yu-Gi-Oh! Products are not up to snuff. Our booster boxes and set designs are so far behind the times compared to what other games are offering. A core set Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster box contains 2 secret rares from a pool of 10, 4 ultras from a pool of 14, 18 supers from a pool of 26, and 192 commons from a pool of 62. It's not too far off the math from what other games operate by. You get a holo in every pack and 6 high rarity cards in the set. That's decent. The main problem is how they decide what cards are printed at each rarity. In the most recent set, Infinite Forbidden, of the 10 secret rares, 8 are worth the price of a single pack or more, with 6 hitting double-digit dollar value, and 1 of them going into the triple digits. If we look at Ultras next, only a startling 3 out of 14 are worth a single pack, with 1 hitting double digits. It sounds really good for secret rare value, but this is an outlier, and also remember, you get 2 of them per box. It doesn't feel great to open product. You're very unlikely to pull a secret rare, and the ultra rares that you do pull are often, the ultra rare slot has a lot of kind of bulk in there. There's a lot of cards that are like sub $1 often in ultra rares, which is, for how infrequently you get them and for how wide that pool of ultras is, it really doesn't feel good. Yeah, you got a 1 in 3, 1 in 4 chance per box of getting a quarter century secret rare, but again, I'm not going to count that for any of this. If you look at another set like Legacy of Destruction, every single secret rare is worth the cost of a pack by themselves. Only 3 of them hit the double digits, and the ultras aren't much better, with only 3 of them again hitting the single pack price. There's a big problem with how rarities are spread throughout cards and spread throughout products, so that a lot of ultra rares and anything that's not exactly a secret rare kind of feels worthless. You feel like you missed out on a pack. It feels like a wasted pack when you don't get a secret in it. It's also, the price of cards is also kind of a symptom of the competitive problems with the game. Because there's only the one format, the Eternal format, only the top 1% of cards will really see play. And as a result of that, if cards are printed at high rarities and aren't part of a deck that's good enough to see play in that one format, no one will want those cards, and a high portion of cards in most sets, especially at rarities like Ultra, are disposable. They are just bulk, which makes opening a box so miserable when you're going to pull 4 out of that pool. And especially after a set's been out for a month or 2, those prices absolutely crater, and it doesn't feel like getting packs as prizing is just so miserable. Like, it's so bad. And you can't judge a set by its financial value. Obviously, you kind of have to consider playability and the cards that come out in those sets, and that's kind of the other big problem that I see. A lot of people I haven't seen talking about the product. I've seen a lot of talk about the metagame and the direction the game's going to go, but I think the product is another really core issue it's kind of parallel to a lot of the other problems people are talking about. But the problem I have with how sets are designed is there's a lot of cards that are printed that aren't printed for anybody. A lot of sets are full of outdated, terrible, or pack filler cards that just see no play and get forgotten really, really quickly. This is seen at all rarities, a lot of ultras. Anyone remember Orphable, the Harmonious Bullbard? That was an ultra rare they printed in like Photon Hypernova or something, and it's like I packed 3 of them. And this is a card that you read it and it's like, what is this for? Who is this for? It feels, a lot of cards feel like they're for formats that don't exist. Just because there's only the one format. If we had like some kind of alternate formats, some other, I don't know, some sort of like, I'm a rotating format enjoyer. I would love to see a standard rotating format. And there's just to kind of give a reason for these cards to exist. It's like having draft chaff that they have in Magic the Gathering sets, or cards that are printed for limited without the limited play. So there's a lot of cards that it's like I'll never understand why they still print them. It is just to fill packs. I know why it is to still print them, but they're such a waste because these are cards that quite literally nobody will want, or the people that want them, they are such a small minority of the player base that there's these draft chaff cards that exist to fill out decks in limited play or serve kind of like niche. They do very narrow things, and what they do isn't impressive either. Packs feel like they need a shake-up in how they're designed, in how rarities are spread, in how cards are distributed, because as it stands, with every other set coming out with a $100 plus staple, remember we had SP Little Knight in October of last year, and now we've got the Fiendsmith Engraver. This is like within the last 8 months, we've got 2 core sets with $100 plus staples in it, and it's a bit ridiculous, and it can't really continue the way it's been going. It's not sustainable. The one that a lot of people have been talking about, obviously, is prizing. I'm not going to speak on this too much. I'm not a super competitive player. I attend YCSs, and that's the extent of it. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Prizing is like completely unacceptable for how big the game is, for how much money the game it makes. When other games, I know Pokemon is like the biggest media franchise on the planet, but when they are giving out like hundreds of thousands per, like their equivalent to YCS, getting like a rubber playmat and a Nintendo Switch doesn't quite cut it. Sorry, my cat's meowing at me. There's newcomer card games like One Piece and Lorcana. Obviously, One Piece and Lorcana have the backing of like One Piece as a franchise and Disney, which, you know, they have like a lot of money behind them. But even just like for comparison, in Lorcana, if you win an event, you get like 7 prize cards and like a full foil set of like the entire standard card pool. For reference, getting top 16 at the most recent NAWCQ, my friend Murat, GOAT of Branded, shout out him. He was on the podcast episode with Metagame GX. That'll be down below as well. He got a prize card, a playmat, 6 packs each from 4 of the most recent core sets, and a binder with 1 of every card from Legacy of Destruction. That was his prizing for top 16 in North America. And bear in mind, that is why top players have such an issue with the prizing, is because you put in all of these hours. This is an extremely complex game. You put the hours into testing the format, into deck building, into tech choices, into all of the testing that goes into the game, into all of the theory, and when you go to an event and you do well at an event, and what you get is an uninteresting vanilla monster as a prize card that people have no attachment to and people don't really want, and a rubber prize playmat that is impossible to sell, and a 7-year-old Nintendo console, it doesn't look great, especially when you can look over the fence and see people in like sister card games making thousands of dollars in cash, or getting actual prizes that are interesting, you know, like prize stamp, like serialized prize cards, or prize like event stamped cards. And we get another versus Glatonia for getting like top 16 or top 8 or something, and it just says this card is awarded for a topping placement at a YCS during this season. They don't even differentiate them by YCS, it's just during the season, so they're all identical. And it's really disappointing, and it's very hard to justify the prizing we have on offer. And the other one I hear a lot of people talk about is the metagame. More specifically, the direction the game is headed in. It's a two-pronged problem, I think. Well, first, for a lot of people, especially on the casual side, is the price. The current best deck is Snake Eye Fiendsmith, a deck that is expected to get hit on the next ban list, yes, but the deck that also costs over $800. A big portion of that price tag comes from the Fiendsmith package, which is like $300, $350, which is like 10 or 11 cards out of the main extra inside, which is like $300. That's insane, which is more than I would want to pay for a full deck, let alone like a small micro engine in a good deck. Like if you're coming from another card game, seeing $325 for a deck is already enough. When you see $800, there's no way as a new player you're gonna want to stick it out. And this is also kind of a symptom of the earlier mentioned product problems, where cards are printed at such high rarities. Of course, the Fiendsmith Engraver, the Fiendsmith Tract, and the Fiendsmith Requiem are all secret rares from the newest set, which means in order to get a full set of them, I think you have to open something like 10 or 11 boxes on average to get everything you need to play that deck. And not only is the best deck so expensive, but the deck that a lot of people think is second best, Fiendsmith Yugioh, is just about as expensive. It's still around $800, and the budget options are all over $200 each. Things like Ritual Beast is like $350, $300. Tempai is still a $200 deck. Yes, you can build them for a budget, but that's the other problem with a kind of eternal format, is because the card pool is so wide and so many cards haven't been printed for so many years, you end up getting a lot of like ridiculously expensive cards that just drive the price of decks up. And Ritual Beast, think things like Lara only has one print, so it's $26. I know it's like $20. I know it's new, but like Elder and like Canahawk were pretty expensive, I think. Just to put into perspective as well how much Yu-Gi-Oh decks cost, the literal best deck in the game in Pokemon is under $100. So if you're coming over from another game, you're gonna look at like Yu-Gi-Oh decks and go, why would I spend so much money on this game? Especially when the pricing sucks, especially when these decks are so expensive, especially when the way the ban list works and there being no rotating format, like a standard format that would kind of almost serve as a ban list, or in replacement of a ban list. It doesn't look great from an outside, especially. The other problem is that it just isn't fun. In Sunseed Jess's video that I mentioned earlier, she brings up another really great point with the direction of card design and the increase in blanket lingering effects, specifically floodgates from hand, with the upcoming print of Mulcharmy Fuaros, cards like Dimensional Shifter, cards like Ghost, the Spooky Dogwood. These are like floodgates that you can activate from hand, and lingering effects you can activate from hand at quick effect speed. And I think as a player base, it's a really good thought experiment to kind of think, is this the direction we want the game to go? Do we want the game to have so many one-card combos? Do we want the game to have these individual cards that are so powerful that they skip turns from hand by themselves? Just by existing, they skip turns from hand. And I don't know if that's a game that I want to stick with, that I want to continue playing. It's not a game design space that I think is interesting. It doesn't create for interesting games. It's like in Jess's video as well, she mentioned that these kind of cards punish you for putting time into the game, because you can play up against someone who just draws Shifter two games in a row or 2 games out of 3, and this is a card that from hand wins the game by itself. And it's not a fun format because it comes down to just drawing better rather than playing better. And specifically when I was testing for Nationals, I was playing Fiendsmith Yubel, and a friend of mine was playing Fiendsmith Snake Eye, and we got to the point in testing where we realized we didn't have to actually play out the game. We could just pick up our opening 5, show them to each other, and go, okay, I'm gonna hand trap you out, or you're gonna or I can play through your hand traps, and then we'd flip the top card up with the person going second and go, does this win? And we could literally just look at those hands. We didn't have to play them out. There was no room for baiting interaction. There was no room for holding hand traps to like a more devastating point in the turn. It was just we could decide. We knew the winner before the game was even placed, or was even finished, before you even played the game, and that is extremely frustrating and extremely unfun. And that's kind of a symptom of the linearity of a lot of recent card design, with the influx of kind of pre-built one card combos. Snake Eye especially, like Snake Eye Ash being, the Snake Eye engine being so cyclical, and every card in Snake Eye getting you to every other card in Snake Eye, really just makes it so there isn't a reason to like experiment. There is nothing unique about Snake Eye, and it does a similar, like the end board for Snake Eye has a lot of the same pieces on it as the end board for Yubel. And decks having unique end boards is something about Yu-Gi-Oh that I really loved. I think like fairer decks that only, you know, that make varied end boards. I think back to like Sword Soul branded Fluwanderee's format, whatever you want to call it, Burst of Destiny format. I think back to that format with a lot of fondness, because there was a lot of decks you could be playing. There's things on the fringes like Tri Brigade. All of these end boards looked very different, and there wasn't much, if any, overlap from what their end boards were doing. Sometimes like a couple of different decks would have a Baron de Fleur, but typically that was a card reserved for like pretty much just Sword Soul was making it. I don't think this format's completely skillless. I think that's kind of a myth that the format's skillless, but I think the skill check is more in deck building and sideboard construction and having the right temperature read of the room before you get in. While that is an important part of the game, it also means a lot of times you get to an event and realize that you lost before it even started because you had the wrong read, at which point, of course, the games play themselves. The other issue I have is a current power level of engines. That's just kind of back to the whole one card combo thing, but like side engines like the Fiendsmith having 0 restrictions. I think back on side engines like Adventure, which have the restriction you can't use the effect of normal summon monsters. I think back to things like Verte into DPE, and which seemed so broken at the time, but Verte into DPE also had the restriction of you couldn't summon after doing it, or if you hard activated the Fusion Destiny, you were locked into Dark Heroes, which meant it had to be like the last thing you did on your turn. Whereas the Fiendsmith is an engine that gives you full playmaking by itself. And the decks playing themselves means that things like every deck feels just uninteresting to play. Yubel and Snake Eye kind of play themselves. Like the combos are pretty linear. Tenpai is a deck that aims to not play Yugioh. Ritual Beast is a deck that plays Dimension Shifter and tries to not play Yugioh. Every deck is like, and then there's an FTK that people are just playing that has like national level tops, and we're kind of just okay with that because everything else around the game is in such a bad state, and every other deck is just so uninteractive and unfun to play that it's not sustainable. Something like has to change, and I feel like the big one is another format, just some other official format. I'm begging you, any other way to play the game. In my humblest opinion, if we had a rotating standard format that changed how sets were designed to accommodate it, that would fix like 2 out of the 3 problems, because rotating format not only gives you another way to play the game, it gives you another metagame. If we don't like the Eternal one, we play standard, and cards that might not hack it in the current Eternal format could be standard all-stars. I think of cards like maybe Doomstar Ulka. It was a Dune common. That card is super cool. I love its design. I love what it does, but there's no way to play, there's no reason to play it. But if we have like a rotating format, all of a sudden, oh, this like common or super is now a format superstar. So now you go and open a set. Now cards are expensive because they're good in Eternal, but cards can also have value because they're good in Standard. It makes sets feel a lot better to open. You can have cards from multiple formats. They'll go into a variety of decks. And stores get burned. Game stores, which is something I didn't even touch on, get burned a lot less with subpar high rarity cards. Another change we can make is to products themselves. If we had the OCGS rarity system, where cards are put in a variety of rarities, which means it makes getting the cards easier and building decks easier, and people who wanted to max out their deck or shiny up their deck still can. In fact, things like Secret Rare SP Little Knight would probably hold a comparable price to what they have now, but people who wanted to just play the game could just get the $10 one, you know? And it means that collectors have something to do. They'll get this every Secret Rare from a set, because now the Secret Rare is a unique printing. As well, I don't understand why we don't have things like alt arts or textured foils or anything that other modern card games have. We still have the same base rarities in a core set that we had in like 2002. And the rarities haven't changed. They've just changed how many of them they give you per box and how many of them there are per set. But like, that's it. Speaking of alt arts, let's fix prize cards while we're on the topic. Just give us like, instead of another Viscotonia, if they just gave out like a special rarity imperm, or like a special rarity and art printed imperm that had like a YCS like the YCS stamp in the text box, I think that would fix a lot of people's problems with prize cards and with prizing. Or make a fan favorite. Put like a Flame Wingman in there, you know? Make a Dark Magician. Make a Dark Magician girl prize card. But just make them cards that people want or can use, because then there's actually something, there's a collectability to them. Because they're such iconic cards from the game and from the game's history. Now, not only are they collectible, but they're desirable. And give out more prize cards as well. Just getting to top, make it so that you just get to top 32 at a YCS, you get a prize card, you win, you get something else, you win, you get, like the way they have it now, just like give us a little more, give us unique prize cards for every stage of it, or like make like, I don't know, something, just make the prizing, there's so much more you can do with the prizing, and it's such a shame because Yu-Gi-Oh is the best card game there is. It is the most fun. It is the card game that I think allows for the most expression of a player. It is a card game that I think checks skill in the shortest amount of time, and it checks very different skills than other card games. And it sucks so much seeing that everything around the game isn't at the same level as the gameplay can be. And it's even more disappointing that the gameplay isn't there right now to back it up. We as players do actually deserve more from Konami at our tournaments, from our products, and from official support for sanctioned side formats and official alternate ways to play the game. And even at its worst, this is probably the worst format I've played in my lifetime, and we still got 4,000 people out to Austin for nationals and 2,600 people in the main event. If we had a little bit more, where would we be? How many more new players could we get? And I want to see this game do well. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I adore the game. Just please get the rest of the game out there.